that is, sorry if y'all just heard that, I started recording. If you all don't have anybody that is listening to you as far as your complaints, your opinions, towards everything that's going on in your city government, we are that group. So we are definitely, and what we envision is one Stonecrest united through the concept of collective work and responsibility to establish and maintain a city government that is accountable, transparent, and ethical. So that is why, or what we envision, and why we are here is to improve the quality of life of Stonecrest residents and their businesses through education, advocacy, and action. So speaking of education, tonight we have a very special guest in the house. We have Mr. Simeon Harris, who is the compliance director of ADOS Advocacy Foundation. And tonight's meeting is going to be facilitated by our member, Ms. Pam Childs, who is going to provide the introduction and then the further facilitation of the dialogue tonight. So I ask that you get your pens ready, get ready to take some notes, get ready to learn, and not only get ready to gain knowledge, but please, 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 we ask that whatever you learn tonight that you utilize towards action in your local communities, because it will definitely be a lot of gems dropped tonight. And without further ado, I'm going to turn the meeting over to our member, Ms. Pam Childs, to get us rolling.
Thank you so much, Alex, and hello, fellow members. Simeon, hello. I just want to put this in context. Simeon and I worked together, and we actually had a great conversation when I was reaching out to him. He is the program leader for the Manager Assistance Program at our company, Apple, at our job. And a lot of the work that we do and the conversations that we have are similar to advocacy and work that needs to happen in the community. And what we found is a lot of the things that are happening in society as it relates to why did I draw a blank? A lot of the things that we are dealing with as far as politics, civil rights, those things we have conversations about as well at Apple. And so as I was getting to know Simeon, he told me about some of his community work. And I thought that it would be great to have him come and share the work that he's doing as an avid volunteer, and to share his thoughts on how Stonecrest can move forward after we've experienced the recent bad publicity that we've had, and how we can improve not employee engagement, but community engagement. So Simeon, I will allow you to do a quick introduction, and then it looks like we have a very small group, so you can share your thoughts, and anyone as he shares his thoughts can ask questions, and then I will also ask questions as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, Pam. And thank you all for having me here today. I was really excited to talk to this group, because after talking to Pam and just hearing about you guys' desire to mobilize your community to make a difference and to make Stonecrest the type of place that you want it to be, I think that is awesome. And I commend that in so many different ways. I live in Gwinnett County, and I've been in Georgia since 2002, so right at 20 years. And I've been in Gwinnett since around 2007. And I've lived all around the Atlanta metro area, and I've worked all around the Atlanta metro area as well. And I found myself in a situation where I didn't see the community that I wanted. Once I started really caring, I think that was the hard part, right? to get to where I really cared, and woke up and was like, hey, having kids does interesting stuff to you. And I woke up and it's like, hey, this isn't what I want. And got on a search to try to make my area what I wanted it to be and what I thought it should be, and it being equitable for a population that equity seems to slip away from very quickly. And that started me on my advocacy journey. I'm a reparations advocate and a transformative Black agenda. And that's where I spend most of my volunteer work, is focusing in those areas. And at the same time, I know that a lot of the changes that we need to see on a day-to-day basis are those changes that we see in our local area, in our cities and in our counties, and at the state level. So I think getting people engaged in the local way is one of the most important things that we can do. And you can't really beat local politics and local advocacy, because that's about how much, where your tax dollars are going, how your roads are looking, who's getting contracts in your city, county, or state. All of the things that really matter the most, how safe it is, all of those things are really local issues. So that's where I found a love, and I enjoy continuing to try to make my community the community I want to see.
Great, thank you so much. Excuse me. So you and I've talked about the recent events here in Stonecrest, and there's a city divided. We have people who have certain desires that don't align with the demographics. What would be your recommendation for us to bring both sides together so that we can get work done?
Yeah, man, that's a great question. I think the question I think, are both sides equally formidable? And I think those are the types of questions you have to ask yourself, because when we talk about bringing groups together, you want a shared outcome, or you want an outcome that fits your needs and the needs of your community specifically. And so I think the big part is, can you describe what that outcome starts to look like? And then figuring out how to bring the community in to forward that vision and to believe in that vision. And I think that that's one of the hardest parts. That's one of the things that makes organizing so attractive to me, is that it's about bringing the community forward with a shared idea or a shared vision or desired outcome that affects everyone. You spoke of when Alex was talking earlier, she spoke of collective work and accountability. And I love those two together, because it's about holding our elected officials accountable and making our community a collective that's looking to move things forward in a together way. And I think that spirit and defining what you want success to look like, so people can get on board with that. There's not going to be many people that say, hey, we want to make sure our streets look nice, and we want to make sure all these things. There are not going to be many people who say no to those when you lay them out in a manner that shows a vision for what you see your community looking like.
Now, you mentioned that you recently attended an speaking engagement with Stacey Abram, and you were able to mobilize at least 15 men to show up. How did you do that?
It was a wonderful event. They did an event out in Cobb County, specifically around Black men. And so I got on the phone. I immediately started getting on the phone and talking to folks that I advocate with, and like, hey, we need to show up. We need to be here, and we need to make sure that we have the questions that we want to ask and the information that we want to obtain, in all reality, to secure our vote. But it came down to speaking to a bunch of people, getting together with a small group of those people and developing questions, sending out a bunch of messages, again, getting on the phone. Hey, can you show up on this time? Talk to about 40 people, 40 men, got 15 who were ready to show up right then, which to me was a success. I would love for 40 to come in, but 15 is better than one. And a lot of these elections are won by such a small percentage. You'd be surprised what getting 10 people in front of your city council will do, or 10 people in front of a commissioner, a county commissioner, what that will do, 10, 15 folks. So never really think that you're too small to make that difference and to advocate. Just make sure that you're organized and that you know what you want. And everyone with you needs to know what you want. We developed 4 questions that we're like, anyone here, these are the questions that you ask if you get an opportunity to ask a question. Everyone was on mission. We had a theme around Black business and state contracts, because that was the area that was really important to us, is Black employment, state contracts, helping undergird Black businesses, getting men back into construction and landscape, Black men specifically back into construction and landscaping jobs. Those were some of the things that we were talking about, and we were bluntly asking, would you be comfortable with ensuring 30% of the state's contracts went to Black-owned businesses? Because we're 30% of the population. These were the types of asks that we were trying to push, and wanted to show that there's some people here that agree with it. And I think that makes the big difference, no matter what you're fighting for, showing that you can mobilize the people, because that equals voters, and being on message with the people you have. Even just the amount of people in this room, you'd be surprised the amount of change that you could make just from this small group here, being concerted in your efforts and tackling it together.
That's awesome. So when I heard you say that align on your priorities and everyone come armed with the questions in advance, knowing exactly what you're going to ask and ensuring that that is the priority for the group.
Absolutely.
Okay, did anyone else have questions before I ask another question? Go ahead, Alex.
Yes, I have a question. I'm going to go back to when you initially mentioned both sides being equally formidable. I find that in Stonecrest, and I'm a baby Stonecrester, so I've been here I've just made a year in Stonecrest. So I kind of came in on the tail end of everything that was happening with our former mayor. And I think from what I've gathered in my very short time here, there's, in general, 2 types of Stonecrest citizens. There's the ones who are, cautiously optimistic about our future and that are ready to move forward and that are ready to, we want answers, but we're ready to move forward with the progress and we envision this city to be something great. And then, because we're in a unique space where Stonecrest is a relatively new city, only since, chartered since incorporated, since 2017, that you have people that have experienced hurt of, number one, not feeling like their voice was heard, and we were incorporated as a city and they didn't want that. Then not only were we incorporated, but now we're making national headlines for these really negative things that have happened. And so they keep experiencing hurt after hurt after hurt. And for those people, when we're trying to combine and, do that collective work, it's like we have to start at square one of even just doing trust building from one person to another. And it's saying we can be great. We can do this, before we can even get to a priority being set. It's like we're having to do trust building work over here because people are traumatized. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on how, as a group like the Stonecrest Citizens Coalition, we can spread our message and get people into a space where they want to even join, where we can motivate them to even speak about priorities for the city, because right now they're just so disengaged because of all of the hurt that they've experienced.
The fight of apathy. It's so tough, right? When apathy sets in, it is the hardest thing. And I think in a lot of areas, this is what we see with Black voters, is a level of apathy, because we've been sold bags of goods and it hadn't paid out. We've been misrepresented, all of these different things that lead up towards someone being apathetic in the political process. Coalitions, I think, are a good way to meet people where they are. From volunteering, it's one of the best cheat codes that I've come into has been service. Going out and finding ways to volunteer with my shirt that goes with my organization, finding ways to go meet other like-minded people. And it's interesting, if you're handing out book bags for kids or handing out meals, the conversations you're going to have are going to be a little bit different and less politically charged when you're talking. And so really finding ways to meet people where they are, look for ways to volunteer as an organization. And also, as you're bringing more people into the fold within your organization, you want something for them to do that where they can exercise the muscles that you're going to need for the fight you're trying to fight, right? And so part of those, so before we did the Stacey Abrams thing, we all showed up at the Juneteenth celebration in the city. That was in Centennial Park. And we were like, hey, we're going to hand out flyers. We're going to talk to people about reparations in politics, right? And we're going to, because that was part of the thing that brought the group together. People could feel that their actions were meaningful in that moment. And it helped more people get on board. And next thing you know, the people that showed up there, a lot of them showed up to go talk to Stacey Abrams. Some of those folks it was their first time interacting with us, when they found out they could go advocate for Juneteenth. And so having situations where you bring folks together. I was just volunteering at a book bag drive with the Eastside Chamber of Commerce, solely for, feeling good about it, but also to meet other volunteers, to meet other people who wanted to advocate or make their community better. That's also where you meet sponsors for the type of advocacy that you're going to need. People who are willing to donate to your cause, people who may not have the time, but they got $20. Because you need a little bit of both for what you're trying to do, whether that be even just to print the petitions you're trying to put out there.
Thank you.
Simeon, you and I've talked a lot about the demographics, and this is related to Alex's question as well. There's a large portion of our community that really can't afford to become engaged citizens because they're in survival mode. And how do we engage those that are living below the poverty line, or are only concerned about being able to pay their rent or how they're going to feed their kids or get them to school? What suggestions do you have on engaging citizens that are in survival mode?
That's probably one of the toughest things you'll run across, because a lot of times what we're advocating for might be a year down the line. It might be 6 months down the line, 6 years down the line, right? A lot of the stuff you're advocating for is down the line, and you have people who are looking to have their basic needs met, right? And that person doesn't want to necessarily hear about showing up here, showing up there. And sometimes I think it's important for us to carry the fight for that group sometimes, and be willing to say, this is what we're fighting for. This is what we're fighting for, and lay it out in the language of their need, while also making sure you understand what services you can connect them with that can help deal with their basic needs. That's another advantage of volunteering, is being able to say, hey, well, there's actually a charity that can help you with this. There's actually, next thing you know, you're providing some resources while at the same time saying, hey, on the 7th, we're voting for this particular thing that I believe would help you in this way. And if you can show up, it will mean something. You know, and do you know other people who need these services, who, you know, you have to deal with their basic needs before you can get anything else. And they have to know that you're fighting for those basic needs as well as what will set them up forward, you know, a little bit further in the future. But it's really tough. It's really tough. And I can't even paint it as like pretty and easy. It's probably one of the tougher things. And it's also the other side of that is, as an advocate, it's tough to continue full speed in the midst of apathy as well.
Mhm.
Right? Like that's the other side of it. I think, you know, as someone who's advocating, you also have to think about how you take care of yourself there, because there are going to be a lot of people who are saying, what are you doing? You're wasting your time. Hey, it's fine the way it is. And a lot of times it's even those people who need those services you're fighting for the most. And so as an advocate saying, that's okay, maybe that person doesn't see it, but this person will, or that person will. So there also has to be some self-care in fighting this type of fight, especially as you gear up for bigger and badder fights with higher stakes.
Right, that's a great point. We do live in a society where people want fast returns on their investment. So here is a question from Malika. She says, this is really great. Can you speak to us about the reality of grassroots organizing timelines, specifically setting expectation for groups about effecting change, short-term versus long-term goals? And you kind of touched on it. Do you have any other thoughts?
You have to be a little bit honest, not a little bit, really a lot honest about what you're doing. And hey, you know, sometimes instead of, hey, we're trying to change this particular thing, the first point of advocacy could be, we're trying to get a meeting. We're trying to get a meeting. We're trying to show up at City Hall. You know, as you start to step it out and you lay out the steps for people, it kind of helps them see the path. Because if they don't see that path, any timeline is going to be ridiculous. And we live in a society where instant is almost the only way to go. And I think that makes it really hard when you're advocating. So being realistic about what this fight could entail and how long, whatever the fight is, how long that advocacy may be needed. Also making it clear from the beginning, this is a sustained effort that we're going to have. This is something that we're going to push, and we may need to knock on doors. We may need to make phone calls. We might have to have multiple meetings, and we're going to need people who are willing to show up. Whatever it is you're doing, make it the biggest task in the world as you're describing it. Even if it's the small thing, because you need some of those big wins to help get you to that next step. Your first win is just getting people to show up. And then your second win is getting them to show up again and to be more educated and enthused about what you're doing. And so I think educating them on the steps that you're trying to take, and being consistent with not just that education, but how you show up as an organization, I think can help make that difference. But it's really tough. It's really tough. I won't sugarcoat that either. It's really tough. That's a great question.
Can you share how you ended up having partnerships with the city of South Fulton in the reparations conversation?
Oh, that was a concerned citizen. A concerned citizen who organizes with us within the ADOS Advocacy Foundation. They were canvassing and helping out when they were voting to become a city. They were doing all of, walking alongside the people who ended up in city council, people who ended up in different elected positions within the city. And they worked to build that relationship and literally went one person at a time and started talking about why we needed to do this proclamation specifically for the contribution of Black folks who descend from slavery. And it wasn't a big thing where there were a bunch of people saying, yeah, let's do it, let's do it. It was the leveraging of a relationship. It was the leveraging of multiple relationships and going in and having those conversations and having that argument fleshed out. And I think that that's a whole nother model when you have those relationships. If you're able to leverage those relationships, a lot of times it's a good plan, putting together that good plan and saying, hey, this is something we can do. This is how it can be a win for you. You're noted as the Blackest city in America. So here goes something that you can do that can be a win. And putting it that way, people were ready to sign on for it. And there wasn't a large level of organizing work to get that and to start that partnership. And now we're looking to do other types of resolutions and further those partnerships for that same reason.
Right. You and I shared some statistics yesterday, or you talked about 15.7% of the citizens in Stonecrest living in poverty, and the median income is $51,000. And that has dropped, to my understanding, as of 2020. We have a huge group of people here who would love for us to get Whole Foods, the Papados, and all of these establishments that bring in are based on the income, the average income. However, our city council right now, the growth in the businesses that they're bringing aren't really significantly impacting the average income in this community. How do we go to our politicians and say, we want quality jobs brought here, and how do we make our city attractive?
Oh, that's $1 million question. That is straight out of $1 million question there. And first, I think it's recognizing it's their job to figure it out. One, like it's literally their job to figure out, hey, and part of it is telling them what you don't like that's here now. Hey, we're not seeing the types of jobs that can help bring people into whatever their next class is. We're not seeing the types of jobs that can fortify a real middle class in the city. The unfortunate part about it is most businesses are going to be looking for a constituency or a customer base that can afford their services, regularly, that can basically help them expand and get bigger. And when you have, that's one of the tough parts about our communities, which is one of the reasons why I'm a reparations advocate, because we know that the reason why we don't have a huge, stable Black middle class is because of the things that were done generations before and what continues to happen. And so it makes us where we're easy to be basically preyed upon by big business, and we end up having to make decisions we shouldn't really have to make. And part of those are what types of businesses are able to come in. If me and you, Pam, we talked about this a little bit before. Even if you were to raise the type of job, would that change the demographics?
Right.
Would it change the demographic? Next thing you know, you have a city with a different type of demographic, different type of government. And is that the city that you want? And it may not be, it may be for some, and you'll find that that's going to be your bigger fight. Mm-hmm. Some people are going to want a new set of residents and some don't. Essentially a new set of residents who can bring in the money that will make the bigger restaurant chains love to be here. I had the opportunity to talk to a pastor in Kentucky who is also the president of an HBCU there. And one of the things he was talking about, his church is in the poorest district in Louisville, Kentucky. And he was talking about how there's literally no restaurant in that whole zip code, and how Walmart won't even show up. They won't even come there. Like, they're like, hey, it's not enough money for it. So he's been working to try to attract different business, some healthy eating options, some all of these different things. But the income of the people there is so low that most businesses don't want to deal with it. Charity, same thing. Hey, we can build a Y over here. Your YMCA, we'll keep it a little messed up. We'll go build a nicer one, the new one for this group here. All of the aspects of that community kind of get drained because the income isn't there. And that's why advocacy in relation to government is so important, because understand it was government that made the white middle class via the New Deal, via the GI Bill, via all of these other programs where we had so many people left off. There's some states, in the state of Mississippi alone, you had less than a handful of people receive the GI Bill. All of those Black soldiers got missed out on being able to purchase the homes and do all of those different types of things. And that brings me to reparations, because there is no city or county or even state fix for our condition in that way as a group.
Dana has her hand raised.
Hi, Simeon.
Hey, Dana.
I wanted to ask, I saw on your website that you advocate for policies to be created and implemented around the Black agenda, it seemed. Am I correct? Okay, so with, oh God, what, I just had it. Legislation, trying to create legislation. I am just your average citizen, don't know much about politics and things of that nature, but if there is legislation that I want to create around a specific topic, how simple or how difficult is it for me, just your regular Jane, how difficult or how simple is that for me to do?
It's really difficult.
Okay.
And a lot, it's really difficult. And it's not even something that I attempt in that way. What I try to, and what we try to build out are the requirements that work for us. So understanding, hey, we're looking for this, this, and this. And it's their job to figure out how to pay for it, how to build consensus amongst other lawmakers.
Okay.
And so, even if you were to write some legislation, then you have to work to get it introduced.
Okay.
Right, which is a whole nother ball game. So I wouldn't focus as much on writing any legislation. More so, I'd focus on making sure you knew exactly what you needed as a community, and be able to express those. Hey, we're looking for additional this. We're looking for more capital for our businesses. We're looking for, just being able to be really specific about what you're looking for in that way.
Okay, thank you.
Resolutions are a little bit easier.
Okay.
You can find good resolution templates, but generally resolutions don't have any money behind it. That's the county or city saying, hey, we agree that it's great to have good schools, or whatever the case may be. But those are a little bit easier. They're more template based. But if you got into some real legislation, you're in deep water there, deeper than I swim generally.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if I should be encouraged or discouraged.
I would say encouraged, because you know what, the harder part is getting 5 people to say the same thing when they show up.
Okay.
Like, to say, hey, we need better water. We need, like, getting 5 people who agree on that same thing is really the big fight. And understanding what you want. So I wouldn't even put it on yourself to have to write something to get the type of city or legislation that you need, because that's what that politician is actually there for.
Okay, so instead of me by myself, my individual self trying to do something. It's better if the organization just goes straight to our council member and allow them to and convey our thoughts and allow them to create the documentation and draft up all of that instead of us doing it. Okay.
Absolutely, because what you did for them is provided the people power that allows them cover to get it done.
Okay.
Right, like it's a relationship, right?
Mhm.
And what you're doing is helping the people power side of it. Hey, I can get 50 people behind this. I can get
Mhm.
100 people behind this.
Mhm.
We just need you to execute on it, or we need you to help develop it. And
Okay.
that's that handoff.
Mhm. Okay, well, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Okay, Malika, I see you have your hand raised, and then we'll go to Andrew, birthday boy.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Simeon. This is great. I really appreciate again you so much for being with us tonight. I have a question about citizen advocacy and really this relationship building, because you were sharing about the importance of building relationships with our elected officials. So something that I've observed, and not just solely through my own personal experiences, it can be difficult building relationships with people who are in elected office. I've observed skittishness. I've observed sometimes what I perceive to be defensiveness, and I wonder about the ability to be authentic and be, relate to one another as human beings, as citizens of the same city, as people who want the same thing, which is to see this city and its citizens flourish. So how does the average citizen build relationships with folks who are busy, who we acknowledge, like us, have lots of life going on, right? I think most of our elected officials in office have other professions outside of the service that they provide through their council seats. So how do we get them to engage regularly, get them to respond eagerly and joyfully of the service, right? You're laughing, but I'm like, how do we get them to, respond eagerly, joyfully, and really embrace what they ran to do, which was, you ran to be my advocate. You were elected to be my representative. You were elected to be my voice, to be my strength, to be my, my ambassador, so to speak here. So how do we engage with folks who we may feel aren't embracing that responsibility in ways that are affirming to community voice?
Pressure is one of the greatest things for a politician, is pressure. My mentor in advocacy, Yvette Carnell, says politicians don't respond to applause, they respond to pressure. And so I think, organizing, politicians would love to talk to one person and that equal them talking to 50, or that equal them talking to 10. They power map their constituents as well, right? Like what organizations hold the voice of the people? What organizations do I need the stamp of to get people behind it? They're looking for people who can bring people. And that is where we have our power, is in that pressure. And so outside of just showing up and finding something that maybe you both agree on, and that, again, that's where that volunteer space really comes in. What they're going to be doing photo ops. It's election time. They're going to be doing photo ops. They're going to be going places, kissing babies. They're going to be handing out book bags. They're going to be doing those types of things. And you need to be there with them. doing those types of things. Sometimes it's the non-political conversation that will get you in a space where you can have a political conversation. It's understanding, you know, your dad, their dad, your mom, their mom. We have children, we have church, we have school, we have all of these different things and these different connection points. And you have to be a special type of person to run for office, and that special could be good or bad. You know, and so you might run into whole types of personalities in dealing with elected officials, but being willing to sit and engage with them. And I also find that I disagree with 100 million gazillion things that involve any given elected official. There's going to be something where I disagree. Some stuff I just got to let go sometimes too, because what I'm really focused on is this one thing that we might agree on, or this one thing that I want them to operate on. Because regardless of what anyone tells you, it is, and I know when it's time to get Black folks to vote, they want to convince you that your vote shouldn't be transactional. It is, though. It is transactional. It's transactional for other groups. And so it needs to be transactional for us in that way too. Like, there are specific things that we need. And this is what it's going to take for you to get elected. This is what it's going to take for us to be behind you. Man, I'd love to support you. I'm a little concerned about this though. I'm a little concerned about this right here. This is what's stopping me from being full-throated in supporting you. Even stronger, this is what's stopping me from volunteering. That's what they really want. They really want an ambassador. They want volunteers. They want people who are willing to put yard signs up. They want people who are willing to go talk to somebody, host a dinner, all of those different things. And so you put yourself in a position to be converted to a volunteer. And they have the opportunity to convert you, and you can let them know how to do that. And if you can show up with more than one person when you do show up, they'll always notice you. They're going to notice who came in that car full and said, hey, we're ready to pass out those flyers.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Andrew.
Thank you so much. I couldn't start my birthday celebration without coming in and being a part of these meetings. I love them so much. And Simeon, thank you so much for your content and the questions that you're fielding from us. And thank you for the insight, realism, and hope at the same time, right? So we appreciate you for that. I am about to jump off. But before I do, I really wanted to say thank you and thank everyone else for being a part of this meeting. I'd love to hear more about, you mentioned coalition earlier, and I'd love to hear more about, what types of partners you think an organization like ours should pursue, whether they're organizations within the city limits or just outside. Who should we be pursuing in addition to everything else you mentioned? Who should we be pursuing as for partnerships and coalition?
Other nonprofits and you'll find most nonprofits specialize in something. So if you're trying to deal with that percentage that's unhoused, then you're going to be looking in your United Ways. You're going to be looking in organizations like that Boys and Girls Club, different organizations that might have programs to help with aspects of unhoused. Or if you're looking for food insecurity, a lot of these other organizations are doing the heavy lifting that may be needed to transform a community or an area, but they may not have the input from the community here to say, hey, we want this in our community too. We want this type of advocacy. So I'd align it on issues and start to look like, are there organizations that support one or more of the issues that are important to you all? And you'll find that they'll also have volunteer opportunities for your volunteers. And that sounds a little odd, but it's important to keep people moving, and it's important to keep people activated. And so it may be a thing where SCC goes and volunteers as a group for another organization, showing up for a United Way food drive or Hosea Feed the Hungry or something as an organization, and come show up and volunteer. And now help you start to build some of those partnerships. You'll also find that most elected officials have some go-to nonprofits. I could say a million things about that, but most elected officials have some nonprofits that they believe in too. Finding out what those are, finding out, because you're looking for influence, you're looking for opportunities to influence, right? So find out the nonprofits that they care about, that they've been given money to, or that they've been allowing to help out the county or the city in a certain type of way, and go volunteer there. Go talk to folks there, because that's going to help you build the face recognition and all of those things needed to influence. And this is all about influencing and utilizing the pressure of people power to influence. I'll just to tell you, I sat in a committee meeting for almost a year, every week, just to be able to have a conversation with 3 people over the course of that year, and to put myself in a position to where I could make a recommendation, specifically around having a dedicated personnel for housing authority. But I literally had to sit there for almost a full year before I could be in the position to make the recommendation that I wanted to make. So I showed up, how can I help? This, that, and the third, and got to where I could say, hey, here goes something that we need. This is what they're doing in other counties. Hey, we call ourselves the most diverse county in Georgia. We're all these things. Here goes something that we can do. But it took a year before I was comfortable making that recommendation. And I ended up winning, someone saying, this is what we need. And now we have someone fighting for that issue. But it was a year's worth of work, and it was a year's worth of silence.
Thank
And
you.
happy birthday. Happy birthday. I hope you really enjoy your birthday.
Yes, I plan to. We're going to start it this evening, but it will continue on as long as it can. Amen.
That's right. Amen.
But yeah,
Great.
thank you.
Do we have any other questions?
Pam, I just wanted to quickly say, one of the things that we're finding that is impacting our city's ability to thrive is the job market. So it's taken a long while to get some positions fully staffed, and then we still have open positions. We really want it. In fact, one of the open positions we have is for a community engagement coordinator. And that's a really important position, even though it's not director level, right? It's really important to the community to have that position filled. We are experiencing things like, we want to be able to talk with the city officials about the fact that on something as simple as on the meetings, the city council meetings that are held and streamed online, they've turned off the chat function. That chat function was an incredible opportunity for community members to engage. It really was. What we found is that when the chat function is enabled, more people showed up because they were able to chat with one another and react, which you can't do when you are in the meeting. It's a little different. Even though Pam and I sit next to each other in a meeting, it's a whole different experience when you're trying to talk while that's happening. So things of that nature, trying to relate to them about why it's important to offer more opportunities for community members to engage around what they're hearing but that community liaison engagement coordinator position will be incredibly important. How can citizens help in those ways? I know that I've shared some advertisements on my LinkedIn page. If I see that our city is hiring, I'll share it on my LinkedIn page. If we have some RFPs, I share the RFPs. But what are other ways that citizens can support their city?
I think you already nailed a lot of them, especially when it comes to like filling positions, right? Because there's so much that you won't have control of. So it's more of providing visibility around it, sharing it in your church groups, sharing it even on like Nextdoor, and things like that, may be able to assist. But there's employers all around the country that are having problems filling positions at so many different levels. And, there isn't a citizen fix for that in that way, because the city and county has to do their part to make these jobs attractive and to make it a great place to work and all of those different things, which you won't have control over. So I'd say you're already doing the things to help with that. The question is the city doing the things to get these positions filled? And those are the types of questions that you can ask. What are you all doing to get some of these positions filled? We need engagement, and there's an engagement position wide open now. What are you doing to recruit the best people for that job? That's pressure that should be on them. Like, that pressure shouldn't be on you to figure out that solution. We should be pressing them on why aren't you getting these positions filled? And always deal with them as the power in the room, because that's what they are, right? And the onus falls back on them. They are the power in the room. Hey, why isn't this done? When can we expect this done? What are y'all doing to make it better?
This reminds me of a conversation that Malika and I were having about the experience level of our elected officials. And in my observation, it appears to be, I know we used the word earlier, trepidation. There's a fear of making a mistake, in addition to the residual effects of what we experienced with the former mayor and how a lot of things were just pushed through, and it's hindering progress because it's almost like they're going back and quadruple checking what they're doing, and it's delaying the progress. So I almost feel like we're back at square one with a lot of things when it comes to getting things going and just creating committees of volunteer. Because when we were a brand new city, there were so many people who were willing to show up and volunteer for different organizations. I was even one of them. That's how I met Andrew. And because we were treated so badly, I don't know if we could ever get back to that space where people really wanted to get involved. I was on the education committee with all teachers. Like, how did I get on the education committee? But I showed up and I did my part. And my fear is that we continue to reset, and challenging them would probably create more resistance. This reminds me of some of the things we're encountering at work when you think about having tough conversations, and how do you build that trust on both sides?
Yeah, no, that's some good stuff. That it still goes back to some of that apathy that we see, and folks not trusting that anything's going to be done. I don't think that there's a way to tackle any of this out without tackling the people portion of it. Like, and I think that's the hardest part about organizing, and that's why it's a step that people kind of shy away from, is getting more people to care about whatever issue it is. If you look in society, there's some great examples of that type of organizing happening right now. Regardless of what side of the argument you're on, the fight for Roe v. Wade. That was 50 years of advocacy on the right. 50, like it was literally 50 years of advocacy. They have a whole society, the Federalist Society, that helps them find the judges they're looking for. I mean, all of these things had to be put in place year over year to get that decision overturned in today. And now you're seeing the advocacy to counteract that, right? You're seeing that advocacy to counteract that. And now politicians are having to take a side. They're having to say, hey, what do I feel about it? Or this is how I see it, or this is how I advocate for this, or what you guys can advocate for. And I think it's that same thing. It's moving the people into the place of telling the elected officials what is needed and what you expect from them. And pre-election, like you can, that voting process, people put it on, hey, it's vote, and then it's wait, and then vote, and then wait some more, and then vote. When it's really advocate, vote, hold accountable, advocate some more, vote, hold accountable, advocate some more. And it's a multi-step process, and there is no beginning or end. It's wherever you start. If you start in the middle of an election cycle, you're going to be an advocate, and you're holding them accountable for what you can get them to agree to when they're running for office. And the last part is, don't forget, like, this is still a new city. Like in terms of citydom, like it's still new. It is still like a brand new city. So your politicians, to something you said at the beginning of the question, they may not be like the most polished yet. They may not have all of the procedure down either, because you may not be dealing with multi-generations of politicians, right?
Yeah.
Like, so
Seasoned politicians.
Yeah, right. But that's a good thing. That means that they may be easier to get their ear when it all comes down to it, because they aren't as seasoned.
Okay, great. Well, I know we're at the top of the hour, and normally if we had a larger audience, we would run another 30 minutes, but I'm going to just check to see if anyone else has a question. And then Simeon, if you have any closing thoughts, I ask that you share them. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and, well, here's Alex.
I did have one last question. Sorry, I'm working with a tired 4-year-old here, so we're battling it out for bedtime.
That is real work.
Yeah, no worries.
But I did have one. My question is more so centered internally in smaller groups. So with Stonecrest Citizens Coalition, I feel like we have like a solid, 5 or 6 people who are, going strong and coming to meetings, and we're not dealing with apathy in those small 5 to 6, but maybe fatigue of like trying to just get stuff done and just coordinate it. So I'm just wondering, in your experience, how have you really dealt with handling fatigue when organizations are just starting and they have these really ambitious people with great vision, but it's only a few and they get fatigued? So how do you, like, as far as like maybe delegation, or do you assign just like maybe one person focus on this, another person focus on this, or how do you deal with that?
That fatigue is real, and if you hadn't felt it yet, you will, and you might go in and out, right? Because that fatigue really, it is real, especially as it gets tougher and what you're advocating for, the stakes get higher. Minimizing your scope because there has to also be a point where you're like, hey, look, we only got 8 people who are really working hard. So maybe this and this over here, we can't focus on right now, but we can focus on this right here. And so start to minimize some of that scope, so you can focus in and do one thing really, really well with the people that you have. The other part is converting more hard workers, which is really hard, but people get disengaged when they don't have something to do, when they can't find a task that they're really good at, or they're not able to work it, because people don't volunteer to be uncomfortable, right? Like they really don't. They don't come and say, oh, I'm a volunteer over here and do this thing that's brand new for me. I look at volunteering for me as a way I can build new skills as well. But most people don't necessarily look at it that way. And so there has to be incremental size things that they can do that allow them to feel a part of the group. There has to be ability for them to learn and not feel lost in the sauce, right? So how do you manage a new volunteer or someone? Is there some tasks you get them to do initially? And kind of think of those ways. I hate to also say this, but I'll just being totally transparent. You may only get 8 or 10 folks who are like really, really hardcore with it. And that's not abnormal, but think about what you can do with those 8 and just focus on doing that.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
No worries. Just FYI, I saw the Howard shirt, and as a Hamptonian, I had to like breathe because as a Hampton guy,
You had to breathe because of the presence and the aura of the real HU in the house? Is that what you? It's okay. You need to get some water too?
I did need some water. I was like, man, she seems really nice, even though she has on a Howard shirt and not a Hampton one. But no, that is awesome. Go HBCUs.
Yes, I am HBCUs all the way. A&T for undergrad and Howard Law for law school.
That is wonderful. That is wonderful right there.
Thank you.
Awesome. So you have definitely gave us a lot to think about. And some of the key takeaways is that we definitely need to take partners and show up and volunteer wherever we can with our shirt on. And I do have my shirt on, just so
I love it.
You can see it. So we do have shirts. So show up with our shirts on, let people know who we are, what we're about, narrow our scope so that we can get work done with the small group that we have, and continue to challenge our leaders to do their jobs and not do it for them.
Mm-hmm.
Good
Man,
stuff.
You summarized so well, Pam. Right?
Those were the things that kind of just resonated with me. Thank you. Thank you. So thank you so much, Simeon. Do you have any closing words? Thank you again for reaching out. You are a friend, a brother of Stonecrest. I know that we will be reaching out to you again. I am already thinking about some of the recommendations you've made. I know there was a huge conversation about trash here in Stonecrest and organizing and people wanting to show up, but not necessarily do the heavy lifting of planning. So it sounds like we need some planners, have roles and things for people to do, and they'll show up.
Absolutely. And thank y'all for inviting me. Anything I can do to help, I would love to. I love that you all are organizing and just trying to make the community that you want. I think that's how we make this the best place in the world, wherever you want it to be. I think that's how we do it. So thank y'all for having me.
Thank you. And I will be circling back when it's time to have a reparations conversation. I definitely think there's an opportunity for us to educate people on why reparations is important. And we deserve it. We deserve
Absolutely.
it.
I look forward to it. And you all have a good evening. Thank y'all so much.
All right, you too. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.